Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would talk about this little video that I found to be very particularly interesting. And of course, for those of you that did not end up watching that of the David Benavidez versus Demetrius Andrade fight, or Demetrius Andrade fight, for whichever way you want to pronounce it, I'm pronouncing it Andrade because I believe that's how it's pronounced in the Cape Verde type of pronunciation. But anyway, neither here nor there. Anyways, when it came to that of the David Benavidez versus Demetrius Andrade fight, many people, including myself, expected it to at the very least be as competitive as the Caleb Plant versus David Benavidez fight. Not only was the fight not that competitive, but Demetrius Andrade, he couldn't even go past round six. And once again, I don't completely blame that on him. David Benavidez, he is the more experienced fighter when you talk about big matchups. And that says a lot, because a lot of these people, once again, and I always see these channels, like I remember when Vasily Lomachenko, I remember when Lomachenko, he was rated as the number one pound per pound fighter. And a lot of these channels, they were saying that, oh, it's stupid and it's disrespectful that Lomachenko is rated as the number one pound for pound fighter because he only has 12 fights and blah, blah, blah. Right, but Vasily Lomachenko had 12 fights, but he had about 10 fights against legitimate champions. So, you can take a fighter like Demetrius Andrade and put him on your top 10 pound for pound list if you want to. But, all that 32 and 0, with 19 knockouts, I mean, it looks pretty on paper. But when you really take a look at the depth of it, it don't really mean shit because you haven't really fought anybody. And once again, I don't completely blame Demetrius Andrade on that. There were certain fighters that were avoiding him or clearly, weren't the hottest on fighting him, pretty much including from, Jamal Charlo, Canelo Alvarez, Jaime Munguia, and a certain amount of other fighters. But once again, I've been hearing about Demetrius Andrade for years upon years upon years about how he had the skill set out of this world, about how he was the most talented 154 and 160 pounder when he was at those weight divisions, how he was way better than Canelo, way better than Charlo, way better than Caleb Plant, way better than all these other guys. The way that his fans talk about him, you would think that he was going to be the next coming of Floyd Mayweather Jr. And, once again, after the way that this fight pretty much ended up, and we're going to review a Boxing Ego video here, because Ego, in my view, has a little bit of logic. He also has a little bit of a pro-racial bias narrative a lot of the times within his videos, but it is what it is. I just thought that we would review it because Ego, he has some points that I agree with, and he has some points that I usually disagree with a little bit because he does get his emotion and his pro-racial view into it. It just is what it is. And when I talk about pro-racial view, I'm talking about biasness, racial bias. That's what I'm talking about. But anyways, I really don't know 100% what to think about this fight, because a lot of people they're going to take a look at this and a lot of people, of course, they're either going to go one of two ways. They're either going to say that Demetrius Andrade was way overrated throughout his career and that he was always a hype job. And then you're going to have the second people, that pretty much say that, or the other side of the line where they say, well, Demetrius Andrade is no longer in his prime. He was too small and, he wasn't experienced in inactivity, and had people fought him in his prime like Canelo and all these other guys, he would have done a lot better, blah, 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 all this sort of stuff. Well, the truth is, in my personal view, is that I think it's a little bit of both. But if I had to lean more to one side, I've always stated this just in my personal view. I've never seen this fighter that just had this out of this world skill set. I seen a fighter that was very talented. I seen a fighter that was an A grade level fighter. I'm not gonna call him a complete hype job, but if Demetrius Andrade was a Caucasian fighter and the LDBC and new media, figures like Boxing Eagle and a lot of these other guys, would they be claiming right now that, Demetrius Andrade would be one of the top guys, even if it looked like he had the skill set that he had? I highly doubt it. It just is what it is. At the end of the day, Demetrius Andrade could not even last a really even a full half of the fight. I mean, he lasted a full half of the fight, but he quit on his stool, after that of the sixth round. And once again, I'm not going to blame him too much for that. I'm not going to get after him too much. A fighter knows when they've had enough. A lot of people, of course, they get after a fighter when they quit. I don't always like to do that unless I think they could have done more and they pretty much mentally gave in when they had something more physically left, like that of a Guillermo Rigondeaux when he fought Vasily Lomachenko, when he clearly was lying about that broken knuckle or that broken hand. But other than that, I don't really go after fighters for quitting too hard. I didn't go after Nicholas Walters against Lomachenko. I didn't go after Garcia against Gervonta Tank Davis. I didn't go after any of those fighters because at the end of the day, when you've had enough a lot of the times, your limits, and a lot of these boxers, they're usually willing to push past their limits. But anyways, the point is this: Andrade definitely did not have a good performance. I thought that he had a very good first 3 rounds. I think that you certainly could debate that he won the first two. Some would even debate that that's debatable. I definitely think that he won round one. Round two, I even said on my live stream that I thought that it was a bit debatable that it could have went either way. But round three was really when things started to turn around. Andrade was winning the majority of that round, but in the final 45 to 30 seconds of the round, David Benavidez started really cracking Demetrius Andrade with some good shots, especially down to the body, and you could very clearly tell that Andrade was starting to slow down a little bit. And like I said, there's just been a lot of surprises for me this year. I've gotten still mainly my predictions correct, but the 3 biggest surprises I think this year would include that of the Terrence Bud Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. fight, the Naoya Inoue versus Stephon Fulton fight, and this Demetrius Andrade versus David Benavidez fight. I mean, I just did not expect him to tire out that quickly, which leads to question because a lot of people are going to ask, was he just a little bit too old? Did he gain a little bit too much weight? Is there a valid excuse for why he lost that badly? Or was he just never really as good as what a lot of people try to say that he was? I'm going to kind of talk about it. I'm sure Ego's going to give his thoughts as well. Let's tune in.
David Benavidez knocks out Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade, and he does it sensationally in 6 rounds. Andrade is forced to retire on the stool. This is the realest breakdown on YouTube. Let's talk about it. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Listen, I gotta first start off by congratulating Showtime Boxing. It's been a hell of a run. Showtime Boxing has been in the game for like 40 years. That was their very last pay-per-view, and I was thoroughly entertained the whole card. So if they had to go out, they went out with a bang because that was a great card. I really enjoyed.
It's very interesting and funny to me how a lot of these LDBC and new media channels, they have so much sympathy for the PBC not being with Showtime anymore. And they were cheering and shooting their guns off, and throwing confetti, when HBO had pretty much shut down boxing. And I get it to a degree because they believe that a lot of the times they were trying to tear down black fighters. I understand, but it's just hilarious because these channels, a lot of the times they go directly after Caucasian or Latino fighters or certain promoters, whether you believe that they're of good character or not. At the end of the day, when you go after certain figures like that, especially fighters, eventually that bad energy is going to come right back around to you. And this is also a big part of the reason why a lot of these channels are like this, because they've seen certain stereotypes, they've seen a lot of hatred towards that of American black fighters especially, and they say, well, if you're going to do that, I'm going to do the exact same thing. That's pretty much what their mindset is. I understand that. But if you have that mentality, then don't tell me you're a logical and an objective commentator. What you tell me is that you're in your emotions and that you're in your feelings and that you pretty much have, a vendetta.
David Benavidez, Andrade, both guys put up a great showing. Obviously, Benavidez won, which we'll get to in this video. You also had Subriel Matias, straight up monster, the first 2 rounds. Actually, that fight with Subriel.
Subriel Matias, that one Puerto Rican fighter, and I usually like the Puerto Rican fighters, but Subriel Matias, not the most skilled fighter that I've ever seen, but he's just a complete, he's just a complete monster in terms of the power and the amount of pressure that he puts on you. Obviously, his level of power is no joke because I've seen him break down fighters, even when they were winning certain rounds, and he just eventually was always able to come back. And once again, he's not the most skilled or multi-dimensional fighter that I've ever seen, but his power is no joke. Because that one European fighter, that Uzbekistan fighter, I believe that he was fighting, he was doing a little bit good in the earlier rounds, but he just got completely tired out by the power and the stamina of that of Matias, or whatever his name is. And on top of that, he was just a little bit too stiff. He did not have great head movement. I would love to see Teofimo Lopez or Devin Haney versus Matias, but I think that their boxing ability would probably be a little bit too much for him, but it'd be interesting.
Matias.
Keep in mind that Puerto Rican fighter Matias, I believe is his name. That's also the same fighter I believe that killed that one Russian fighter, Max Dadashev, a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, took too much damage in the fight, and unfortunately, of course, suffered a death. Or suffered death because of his traumatic brain injuries.
And David Benavidez's fight, they both are straight killers, and they perform almost in the same way. There was.
This is a Morgan & Morgan legal alert. Google has allegedly violated the privacy of millions of Americans.
There was some heat in the first 3 rounds or so from the opponent, some resistance, but then they have the willingness and the come forward style and the pressure, and they systematically broke their man down. For Matias, he broke down Ergashev, who was undefeated, and then for David Benavidez, he broke down undefeated Demetrius Andrade. So if you look, and if someone else steals this talking point, you know where you heard it first. There are a lot of parallels between the Subriel Matias style and how he fought and made his guy retire on the stool and the David Benavidez fight. Both guys took on.
I agree there is. They're both really good pressure fighters, but the difference is that David Benavidez, in my view, he's probably about 10 times more intelligent and better than what a Matias is, or at least certainly 5 times better. David Benavidez actually has some more skills than what you would think. Now, does he have a certain amount of holes in his game? Yes. Does he have the best of feet? No. Does he have the greatest head movement in the world? No. Does he have the greatest defense that I've ever seen? No, he doesn't. Is he a guy that I would say has A+ level power? No, but he has good enough power. He has great conditioning. He's improving his skill set, and he is highly, highly motivated, and he's there to pretty much kill you. That's what David Benavidez is there for. So I agree that their styles are, certainly similar because they're both pressure fighters, but David Benavidez is a lot more intelligent and a little bit more multidimensional in my view than what a Matias is.
Tough on paper, undefeated challengers, and both guys came out blazing opponent-wise, Andrade and Ergashev, in the first 2-3 rounds, and then they started to wilt as soon as they started. The opponent, Matias and Benavidez, started to land their power shots and not give them any room to breathe. And realistically, that's how you fight a boxer. If there's a pure boxer.
I agree. And I was even saying during my live stream that Benavidez cannot stay in the mid-range with Demetrius Andrade throughout the whole entire fight. He's going to have to get in there, and he's going to have to throw whatever punches that he can. And to be honest with you, I think David Benavidez, I think that he was a little bit startled in the first part of the fight because Demetrius Andrade had the speed, he had the angles, and, it kind of started off a lot like that of the Caleb Plant fight. But Andrade, for allegedly, being 10 times better than Caleb Plant and a lot of these other fighters, he didn't have the elite counter-punching ability in this fight the way that you would think that he would. At least if you fell for that of the, Demetrius Andrade is the best middleweight and the best 154-pounder, way more talented than Canelo, all that other shit. I personally never fell for that. I never seen that in my personal view. But if you believe that, then you certainly would have expected more out of him. I thought that he threw some decent counters here and there, especially to the body. But in terms of the head, I saw very rare, great counters from that of Demetrius Andrade.
You make him uncomfortable. Or a boxer puncher, you make him uncomfortable. You don't give him too much area to work and time to think and stuff like that. Pressure, 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 but it has to be intelligent pressure. If you come forward like a maniac, then we've seen boxers pick that style apart.
And once again, let me also state this, because Dante's Boxer Nation and some other people were saying, Demetrius Andrade, he just couldn't handle the size after coming up 3 weight classes. Like, bro, what are you talking about? Demetrius Andrade hasn't fought at 154 in several years. What are you talking about? And this is his second fight at the 168-pound weight division. And Andrade apparently rehydrated at about 190-something pounds yesterday, or during that fight. Apparently that's what he rehydrated at. So let's stop the bullshit excuses about, he's way too small, all sort of bullshit. Andrade is about 6'1" to 6'2" with a 73-inch arm reach, and allegedly he had this skill set out of this world. The truth is about Andrade, even though I think that he is a great talent, or was a great talent, because I think his career is pretty much done now, he was never as elite as what a lot of people tried to say that he was.
So it's definitely a sweet science behind a systematic pressure fighter like Subriel Matias and David Benavidez. So all in all, much better final Showtime card than the HBO card. If I'm being honest, HBO's last card was like mid at best, but this was great. David Benavidez versus Boo Boo Andrade. Now, I'm going to start off with this, and I'm going to give my fair breakdown and objective thoughts like I always do. Subscribe to the channel. It's free.
Yes, completely objective. For sure.
Demetrius Andrade, he showed a lot of valor, a lot of honor, and a lot of heart throughout the whole fight. There's a lot of...
Right, as long as it lasted all 6 rounds, and then he quit on his stool. Listen, let me just state this, because Boxing Eagle always states this whenever it comes to a black fighter, especially, that he ends up liking, especially that of Deontay Wilder or Andrade or another fighter that he's trying to, stick up for. And listen, I get it. I can appreciate it to a certain degree. But then when it comes to other fighters like that of a Latin fighter or that of a Caucasian fighter that ends up getting their ass whooped or ends up losing, he basically says the same thing every time, that I can only give you so much credit for heart. And I agree with that. I'm not a person that gives that much credit for heart. To me, you have to win the fight, especially if allegedly you have the skill set out of this world, and Demetrius Andrade just did not show that yesterday, so it is what it is. So there's only so much credit I can give you for heart. Andrade, I think, is a very good dude. He seems like a very great guy outside the ring. He seems like a decent guy, and on top of that, I think he's a very good talent. But there's only so much that I can give you for heart, and I keep that same energy with every single fighter. At the end of the day, he was very competitive within the first 3 rounds, but then every round after round 3, I mean, he literally had no stamina whatsoever. He had nothing. He had no legs, no stamina, no punch resistance. I mean, punch resistance to a degree, but not to a great degree. So you would just think, once again, for all the shit that you've been hearing about out of Demetrius Andrade, for the past for the past 10 plus years, that you would have seen something more.
Demetrius Andrade.
It's almost like that of the Wizard of Oz, at least to a lot of people. Once again, I never seen Andrade on that level that a lot of people try to put him on. But it's almost like that movie, The Wizard of Oz. You hear how great he is and how he's this almighty leader and all sort of stuff. And then it turns out pretty much he's just a sham, at least to a certain degree. And I don't want to call Andrade a sham to a complete degree, but that's what he came across as yesterday.
Like Andrade, like he's just being slighted. A lot of people roasting him, but it was a hell of an effort.
Right, just like you were roasting Canelo Alvarez when he lost to Bivol, just like you were roasting Tyson Fury when he lost to Deontay Wilder, just like you were roasting Vasily Lomachenko when he was crying and complaining overall when he lost to Devin Haney. So I don't want to hear shit about this. Once again, if you're a person that is going to criticize certain fighters and call them great white hypes and all this sort of stuff, it doesn't really matter what demographic you are. Caucasian, Latin, black, it doesn't really matter what you are. You are eventually going to have to, understand that you're going to get the energy that you put out there. You're going to have a lot of people, once again, that are clearly trying to start shit with you, because they have a problem themselves and that they clearly have a racial issue or, something wrong with them. But at the end of the day, when you put out so much of that bullshit, about Canelo, how we hate him and how he's overrated and a white hype and all sorts of stuff and all these other fighters, eventually you're going to get that energy right back. But then they love to bitch, moan, and complain and then play victim about, oh, well, Andrade and Wilder, they're not getting the proper respect. Why would they get the respect? Because a lot of people, especially on your channels, are saying that you do the exact same shit to other fighters.
To be honest. And he did some things with Benavidez that we're not used to seeing. What I did like from Andrade was
Alpha Brain is one of the most important supplements that I've ever found ever in my life, if not the most important one. And
was that Andrade, he attempted to fight super awkward, aggressive. He got really low, and Benavidez has like an upright style where Benavidez was having to punch, and Demetrius Andrade had this low, almost like capoeira, like Eddie Gordo from Tekken. Just real low angles, and he was trying to turn him and spin him and catch Benavidez slipping and then hit.
Well, that's Demetrius Andrade's game. He fights very low, and I think to a degree that it works for him. The problem with Andrade is that he also likes to do these looping punches and these very wild, sometimes hooks. We've seen a little bit of it yesterday. He looked sharper, and it especially worked to the body. But eventually, he just didn't have great stamina, and eventually Benavidez was getting him with the jab. He was starting to pepper him with the jab, and he was also starting to get him with the right hand, both the hook and the right cross.
Him with a shot once he spun him. He was doing some crafty things. There was even some moments where he tried to bully Benavidez and push his back to the ropes and then land overhands and stuff like that. Made for a very good fight. Now, for the bad and the ugly for Andrade.
Look at Andrade's face there. Shit!
is the bad is Andrade. And
the bad is about Demetrius Boo Andrade is that his career bid pretty much is over. Unless you want to fight Janabek, unless you want to fight David Morrell, there's no fighter out there that's really going to want to fight you. I mean, maybe Canelo if he comes off a loss. Maybe Jamal Charlo, although I highly doubt it. He's never shown interest in that fight. I just don't see who's going to fight you. David Morrell maybe because he wants to prove himself. Does anyone see Demetrius Andrade even beating David Morrell? I don't. Just my personal view of it. But we'll see.
Benavidez have both been considered boogeymen in boxing. Andrade has been a boogeyman probably longer because we've known about him since the HBO days, 54, 60, 68. And his career, through various reasons, some of it his fault and some of it people avoiding him. But a culmination of these things gave Andrade a lackluster resume. And it really didn't prepare him for a fight like Benavidez. Like Lucas Keeler can't prepare you. Artur Akov can't prepare.
Let me also state this. This is why a certain amount of fighters like Lomachenko and Devin Haney and Canelo and David Benavidez or Crawford and Jerome Butsenis, or even Mayweather with certain fighters when he was about to fight Canelo, or Canelo was calling him out, or against Keith Thurman. They say basically, listen, dude, I'm the big time cash cow. I can make any move that I want to do when it comes down to it. You have to appeal to me. You have to try and convince me. Sell me. It's almost like that show, Shark Tank. You kind of have to convince them, in order for them to invest in you. It's pretty much like that. Canelo is the main cash cow in boxing. He's still the main cash cow in boxing. Now, how much longer that's going to last, we'll see. Because Gervonta is right there. But, at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, Canelo, he's fought big names in his career. And that's why a lot of the times, when it comes to these fighters, they say that you're going to have to fight somebody, and beat someone actually of name before I fight you. Because if I fight you and you just don't beat anyone of name and I beat the shit out of you, or I beat you, people are just going to say later on that I beat a very green or inexperienced fighter and that you were never really that great in the first place. So that's why a lot of these guys, when they take a look at someone like a Boots Ennis, or they take a look at someone like an Andrade, or they take a look at someone like, a David Benavidez, or, someone else, they say, you got to fight someone first. Because I'm not fighting someone that has no names on his resume, isn't that big of an attraction, and it may not even be as big of an event for another fight that I could possibly take. And on top of that, it could be less challenging, than potentially fighting you, so that's just not going to work.
For a guy like Benavidez. So Benavidez has taken some tough fights like Anthony Durrell and Caleb Plant. And I always tell you, experience matters. When you're in the pros and you're fighting high level, that's going to...
I agree. And that's why I also said about the Canelo versus Mayweather thing. Like, a lot of people say that, people are just making an excuse when it came to the Canelo Mayweather fight. Listen, if you're saying that, Canelo was just not an elite fighter and that he wasn't a good fighter, then yes, that would be an excuse. Because Canelo Alvarez clearly was still one of the top 10 pound-for-pound fighters. He still was a great fighter when Mayweather fought him. And I still believe that the best of Mayweather is more skilled than that of Canelo Alvarez. However, the thing is this, because people take a look at Canelo's resume for that fight and they say, oh, well, Canelo Alvarez, he had 40-something fights, so he should have been way more than experienced. Right, but there's a difference between being some of the biggest fights of your career, like when Mayweather had fought Cotto, Victor Ortiz, De La Hoya, Zab Judah, all those big fights, big fight after big fight after big fight. And Canelo, sure, he fought certain fighters that would have been notable or known, But the only real big fight of his career was against that of Austin Trout.
That's good, especially if you win, because I'd rather
And
capture.
that's why a lot of these guys, they've been trying to allege now that Canelo, that he's still the same exact fighter and that he hasn't gotten any better, which doesn't make any fucking sense. Because for any of us that know boxing, we all know that he's improved a little bit. It doesn't mean that he's greater or a better fighter than what Floyd Mayweather Jr. was, but that's the main thing that they're trying to prevent because they know that a lot of people are going to try to claim that Canelo eventually is going to be in that greatest of all time argument. They can't have that.
W and win.
Now, would he ever be there for me? I'm not quite so sure.
And then go back and look at tape and see what I could have improved on, than to lose and then have my confidence crushed. So Benavidez kept winning. And even though there was some resistance in the Plant fights, the Durrell fights, even Kyrone Davis, he was pretty tough. Like, he wasn't just going away. Or that Angulo dude, I don't think had ever been stopped before. So Benavidez had a great developmental plan with him and his team to prepare him for these big moments to shine with the bigger names, because basically he's had tough fights. I mean, even the fight with Ron Gav.
Exactly. And when it comes to experience, it doesn't always matter how many fights you have. The experience that matters is that you have fights that are going to build you up and that actually matter and that are going to make you more skilled. You can have a fighter that's 50 something and 0, and if they've never fought a legitimate champion or an A grade level fighter, they're not going to beat a fighter that might be 25 and 0 and is also exceptionally skilled or very greatly skilled, but they have a decent amount more experience against elite level competition. It's not going to happen, at least not usually. Now, Crawford, for example, he kind of had more experience. He had less experience against elite level champions than that of Errol Spence Jr. But Crawford, even before he fought Spence, had to get some good experience in against that of Sean Porter. And if you remember that fight, that was a very tough fight for Crawford. That was not easy for him at all. And I think that really helped him out before the Errol Spence Jr. fight.
Real. He got dropped in that fight. People were clowning him. People said he was suspect. And then he came back super correct and stopped Ron Gavril. And I think he even broke his nose or jaw or something like that in the fight. And it was completely different than the first fight. He didn't get dropped and he didn't really lose rounds and stuff like that, whereas the first fight was tough. And I think some fighters need that. A lot of fighters need that, where
I agree. Keep that same energy, please, with Tyson Fury and some of these other fighters that you despise.
if you just blowing out people, it's cool, but that doesn't really test you. Iron sharpens iron. So when you're fighting and you're
Meet your next pillow. Why do we make our pillow in the shape of a cube? I'll tell you.
you have to match wits with somebody who's as talented as you or talented in a different department, I think that's where you grow. And I think that was a big separator here for Demetrius Andrade.
I agree. And once again, I said that eventually we're going to find out if Andrade gets one of these fights, how truly great that he is, because he's never been in a fight really ever in his career. When I say that, I'm talking about a fighter that actually can truly challenge him in terms of greatness. Dude, there's only been one fighter that's ever done that with that of Demetrius Andrade, and we see what happened.
Yes, he's an Olympian, but what year was those Olympics that he went to? You know what I mean? Versus, as I mentioned, for Benavidez,
Well, just because, you were great in the Olympics don't mean shit for the professionals. If we're going off of the Olympics, there's a lot of fighters, like that one dude. Who the hell was that one little Polish dude that had the Miguel Cotto tattoo? Ivan Redkach, that's his name. I believe that he was a gold medalist or a great Olympian. He goes to the professional boxing circuit. He ain't shit. So once again, it doesn't always mean anything.
it's been a steady progress and a growth process as he's tried to hunt down the bigger names. Finally got a bigger name, and he prevailed as the boogeyman. So that's the bad for Andrade. He waited. You got to feel bad for him almost, because he waited, couldn't get the right opportunities. Finally gets a big.
Well, it's partially his fault as well because he turned down business with the PBC and turned down other deals as well at times in his career. So unfortunate, but completely blameless on Andrade? No.
Game, and he gets crushed in 6 rounds.
Or Andrade.
Right? Now, the ugly for Andrade is this. You guys got to pay attention. The ugly for Andrade is there's a lot of
That sounded like a Deontay Wilder impression.
people saying that he quit. Now, I don't like to put
Because he did quit.
the quit jacket on people, because I even said in the card that Ergashev quit.
You don't like to put the quit jacket on. Oh, please. Just stop. You had no problem saying that Ryan Garcia quit against that of Javante Tank Davis. You had no problem with saying that other certain fighters, that AJ quit against that of Andrew Ruiz. You don't like to put the quit jacket on people. Get the fuck out of here. You don't like to put the quit jacket on people. Please.
When Subriel Matias started to kick up his offense and was cornering him and hurting him and landing combinations. But it did look like Demetrius Andrade quit. I am a fair critic.
There's no looking about it. It's a 100% fact. In fact, you can even see in his corner that Andrade says, stop it. He even says, stop it. Now, once again, I'm not a person. I don't mind if you quit in a boxing match because that's a sport that could potentially take your life. We've seen it happen before. So once again, I'm not going to go after Andrade for quitting on his stool. But if we're trying to go off of this shit about, oh, he didn't quit on it. Yes, he did. He quit. It is what it is. I don't have a problem with it because he was severely damaged. And to be honest with you, it's not like he really had anything left. He was getting the shit kicked out of him consecutively for 2 rounds in a row. He had nothing left.
On my channel, and the reason I say that, some people are like, oh, he didn't quit. He put up a hell of a fight, and this is why I'm saying this is the ugly. He put up a hell of...
He was decently competitive for the first 2 rounds. He was very good for the first 2 rounds. And then in the 3rd round, he clearly started to short up. Once again, is there any other fighters? If this was a Caucasian fighter, would he really be putting this amount of sympathy in? Like, quit trying to, put rainbows and sprinkles on this. Just admit it what it is. It was not a great performance. And to be honest with you, Demetrius Andrade really went out horrendously.
A fight. He showed heart throughout the fight. Every time, every second he was in the ring, because he was in bad shape from the 4th round, from the first knockdown. He never really recovered. So everything else was pure instinct, pure heart. But the reason why, and this is what fighters, they really got to talk to their team and be on the same accord. I really wish that fighters would get with their team and have a scenario or some kind of chat about what happens in these situations where the fighter is absolutely losing and absolutely getting pummeled, which was the case for Andrade in them later rounds. The reason being, me personally, ego, I like it a lot better when the corner stops the fight as opposed to when it comes from the fighter. Because when it comes from the fighter, people are going to say you quit. Because the fighter is the one that is waving the white flag, basically. So,
I don't completely disagree with that, but once again, I don't really mind that Andrade quit on a stool. Listen, at the end of the day, you know when you had enough. I think Andrade, to be honest with you, may have even suffered a broken nose. If it's not broken, it's definitely one hell of a sprain. It's definitely one hell of a swell up. At the end of the day, Benavidez put a lot of punishment on Andrade, and only within about 6 rounds.
Your corner is...
Really, he only put a lot of punishment on him within about 3 rounds. Because the first 3 rounds, Benavidez really was not landing or throwing a whole lot.
Watching, and they see what they see, and you're getting beat up, and they say, hey, ref, that's enough. Hey, doctor, that's enough. Then it falls on the corner, and it preserves the fighter's integrity because the corner made the decision to stop it. Or if the corner, like, let's say Kell Brook versus Triple G. So basically, realistically, chocolate right hand brownie. Hell no, guys, hey, Max, right? You look at that fight. Nobody said that Kell Brook quit because Kell Brook was swinging and fighting to the end with a broken orbital, and his team seen what they didn't like, so they decided to throw in the white towel. And for me, as a pure boxing head, I really prefer it that way. I prefer it where it falls on the corner, because if it falls on the corner, then you don't have this stuff coming back to you. Unfortunately, from what I've seen.
Right, so you don't like it when certain fighters or fans say that that fighter quit, unless it's AJ Anthony Joshua or, a fighter that you don't like. Like, come on.
Andre was the one.
Ryan Garcia, etc.
when their doctors and refs were crowded around his corner in between rounds and deciding if he should come out or not, he looked to his father and said, "Stop it." So he kind of did
Absolutely.
quit. If we're
No, there's no kinda about it. There's no kinda about it. He said stop it. He quit. That's what quitting is. When you say that you've had enough in a fight, I don't care how badly damaged you are, you quit. Now, there's no problem with that. There's no problem with sometimes quitting in a fight. He knew when he had enough. I don't have a problem with that. I have no problem with that. In my view, it does not ruin his integrity whatsoever. I don't find him mentally weak for that. He was getting beat up very, very badly. And for him to say that, he must have felt something was very badly wrong. So I don't have a problem with it. But let's stop beating around the bush. Oh, well, he kind of quit. He quit. That's literally, you look up the dictionary definition. That is literally the dictionary definition of quitting.
being real. So that's the ugly for Demetrius Andrade, right? I think he showed maximum amount of heart, but that all kind of went away when you uttered those words because he said, "Stop it." And then his corner man or his chief sec.
This country has never been so divided. Are you a licorice lover or hater? We at Licorice
Second or whoever was like, all right, that's enough, stop it. But I really had wished that the corner did it so it didn't fall on Andre. But it played out how it played out, and I give you guys my honest thoughts. So I understand why people are saying that he quit in that given moment. I told you, this is the realest breakdown on YouTube. And I know a lot of people have a hard time comprehending what I'm saying. Like, oh, how are you going to say he quit and all that? Bro, a quit is a quit. If you forfeit, if you wave the white flag, you
Really not that hard to comprehend. Anyone overall that has a hard time comprehending that, they probably have a hard time comprehending pouring water into a glass. I mean, like, come on.
wave the white flag. Gabe Rosado has been in many fights where the going got tough and he never really folded. Like, look at his fight with Triple G. His face was a bloody mess, massacred. Triple G got crazy power. Gabe Rosado got heart. So he's gonna be fighting till the until somebody stop it. And again,
I think you also have to take a look at it differently when that fighter is a champion or they believe they might have possible later on opportunities. Andrade is not just some guy that's going to be a journeyman and pretty much has to get the shit kicked out of him almost near death, in a big fight like that, to get that shot. Now, to a degree, he does to a degree, because this pretty much was his last shot. But Rosado and some of these other journeymen, they'll be willing to take the beating a little bit more because they know they have no choice. They have to get that big win if they want to go somewhere. Andrade, he still might believe that he can get that opportunity against Janibek or Charlo or someone else. So he might be saying unto himself, and this is just a possibility. I'm not saying that it's what happened. But, it might be a possibility where he says, you know what? I'm taking way too much punishment right now. I have no stamina. I have no legs. He's hurting me very badly. Before I get knocked out very badly, I might possibly have a choice against Janibek, Charlo, some of these other guys. Maybe I can refresh, come back, and we'll see where it goes.
I'm not saying that Andrade wasn't taking punishment because absolutely for 3 rounds or 2 rounds or whatever, he was taking punishment. So I'm not complaining about the actual stoppage because you could have really made the argument that it could have been stopped in round 5, right after
That's the same thing I said.
the knockdown, because the knockdown happened at the end of the round 4, so it wasn't enough time for Benavidez to really put the hurt in. But round 5, he hadn't recovered and he started getting pummeled. You could have stopped it in round 5. So make sure we're loud and clear. I am very eloquent when I do these videos and the realest breakdowns, which makes me the greatest to ever do this in the digital age. I'm the best in the business and it's not even close. So mark my words. If you're going to quote me, no beef with that. But don't take what I say and make your own context to it. I'm not saying the fight shouldn't have been stopped. But for me, ego, I prefer it when it's out of the fighter's hands so it doesn't fall on the fighter. So that's why your team, they got to just see it and be like, nah, bro, live to fight another day. And then no one will call you a quitter. But now, unfortunately for Andre, people are saying he quit after a hell of a performance. And I don't really like that.
A hell of a performance. A hell of a performance. You mean fighting good for about 2.5 rounds and then getting the little shit kicked out of him for the rest of the fight? A hell of a performance. Like, come on. If this was a Caucasian fighter, you know, when people would be saying a hell of a performance, like, dude, it's not even like Andre lasted 9 or 8 rounds. The dude could not even go past round 6. A hell of a performance. Like, get the fuck out of here.
For him, but he is the one that uttered those words, like end it or stop it was the act.
Caleb Plant against both Canelo Alvarez and also that against David Benavidez lasted 3 times as longer overall than what Demetrius Andrade did, you know, in that fight against David Benavidez or Andrade.
Actual words that he chose to say. As far as David Benavidez, A Star is Born, I've been telling you about Benavidez. Puts a lot of pressure on his opponents, and now his performance put a lot of pressure on Baby, you won.
It certainly did, and I think that Canelo realizes now that he is going to have to take that fight. I think he knew more than likely that that fight was always going to happen eventually, but I think that Canelo, just like a lot of other fighters, that he wants to make it worth his time. And he knows now that that fight is finally worth his time, especially since he got Demetrius Andrade out of the way. You know, but I do, once again, I predict that Canelo will fight another fight in that of May, and then I think he's going to be fighting David in September.
Canelo Alvarez. So, you guys, if you watch my channel, you know I've been big on Benavidez, and he's doing little subtle things.
Yes, especially because you don't like Canelo Alvarez. Anyone that they can try to use against Canelo Alvarez, they're big on.
In there, just breaking people down. I think his experience as a teen really, really is paramount. A lot of people aren't going to break it down just like me. That's why I'm needed in this game. I can't leave boxing alone. The game need me. So him sparring with Triple G, him sparring with guys like Kelly Pavlik. Kelly Pavlik was running people out the gyms. Kelly Pavlik got real deal, legit power, that Youngstown power, right? And
Kelly Pavlik or Pavlik, whatever however you pronounce his name. Unfortunately, he was a little bit before I started watching boxing. But of course, for those of you that don't remember Kelly Pavlik or Pavlik, he was the guy, I believe, that first defeated that of Jermaine Taylor. I believe he was the first one to defeat Jermaine Taylor. I can't remember. Jermaine Taylor, he's been knocked out more goddamn times than Amir Khan, so I can't really remember.
I believe Sergio Martinez said the hardest he's ever been hit was by Kelly Pavlik, right? So if you're sparring him as a team, you got to be pretty durable, and they got to have some real faith in you because you're sparring a prime Kelly Pavlik, and you're not in your prime because you're a teenager. You might not even have all your man strength. So the fact that Jose Benavidez, the dad, was comfortable putting his son in there with Kelly Pavlik, who was far more seasoned, that shows me that Benavidez is pretty tough and nice. And I knew all these things.
He definitely is. He has some faults in his style, but, you know, at the end of the day, he has great stamina. He's very big for that weight class, and he's decently talented, and his boxing skill set is getting better.
He sparred with Bivol. Bivol also told you that Benavidez could beat Canelo, and then he later, after that interview, beat Canelo himself. So
yes, and Bivol and a lot of fighters right now, they're claiming that that fight is 50-50, and I agree that fight really is 50-50. It will depend on Canelo Alvarez's stamina. If Canelo Alvarez has a full tank of gas, and if he can go the full 12 and throw consistently, I would have Canelo favored in that fight. Now, if he tires out a little bit, especially in the first half, after the first half, I would favor David Benavidez to kind of run away with it, or not run away with it, but kind of to slowly walk away with it in the second half of the fight. But a lot of people are claiming that it's 50-50, and that goes to show you, once again, how skilled and how great Canelo actually is. Because Canelo is 5'8" with a 71-inch arm reach. He's a decent amount smaller than Benavidez. And once again, these guys are saying, oh, well, Canelo, he rehydrates this, and all that's, you know, fine and dandy. I get it. But at the end of the day, the man is 5'8" with a 71-inch arm reach. Andrade rehydrated at 190-something pounds yesterday. And I keep telling people this, that, you know, there are certain people around those weight classes to where they're bigger and heavier than Canelo, a.k.a. the Charlo, you know, Jamal Charlo, a.k.a. Danny Jacobs, a.k.a. Demetrius Andrade, even a few others. They're bigger than what Canelo Alvarez is, and on top of that, they're lengthier. So once again, this just goes to show you the true skill set of Canelo Alvarez, that a lot of people, even with such a size disadvantage, that they have it as a 50-50 level fight.
All in all, Benavidez, I've been telling you about it. Now, hopefully you guys believe me. I don't steer you guys wrong. I tell you who to watch for. I actually, one of the earlier performances from Benavidez that I was live for, and I'm like, yeah, okay. It was Benavidez. He fought on the Andre Berto, Victor Ortiz 2 card in SoCal. And I went down to SoCal.
I remember that fight where Victor Ortiz ended up losing that fight. But to be honest with you, I mean, that was pretty much expected. He was coming back, and, you know, his mind probably wasn't all there. And Victor Ortiz had been washed up ever since he lost to Floyd Mayweather Jr. He was never the same after that fight. You know, so it is what it is. I remember he lost that fight. There was some Mexican in the crowd, threw like a box at Victor Ortiz. I remember that fight.
And he beat this black dude who was undefeated, if I'm not mistaken. And, you know, I really paid attention to Benavidez before that. But after that performance, I'm like, oh, okay, because the dude, I don't even know if he ever came back to fight, to be honest, after the Benavidez fight. But truth be told, that dude had, you know, a decent name in boxing circuits and boxing circles until that Benavidez fight. So, you know, Benavidez has been nasty. He been on point. And another thing I like, I could go on all in all because I got a lot to say, but you guys got to subscribe. I'll close with this. The David Benavidez, another thing I really like. And once again, I'm giving you uncut gems. It's not a bunch of filler. It's not a bunch of yelling and like fake theatrics in my videos. I'm giving you real boxing dialogue. So take this uncut gem, and if you hear it recycled throughout YouTube, because people always, they don't want to give credit, but they take my style, my image, my swag, the talking points I use, and
Your bullshit.
they run with it and act like they created it. So if you hear this, just know where you got it from. I'm the pioneer of this. David Benavidez, what I really like is he's fighting complex styles for his style, such as Anthony Durrell, Caleb Plant, and Demetrius Andrade.
Now more is less with Cox Internet and Cox Mobile. From fiber-powered internet.
Andrade, and he's beating them all by style.
I mean, is Anthony Durrell really someone that, is he really someone that's a super complicated style? I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but the Durrell brothers have not been relevant pretty much ever since about 2016.
Stoppage, except for Caleb Plant, and he almost stopped him. But at the end of the day, he's not complaining. Notice other guys who are deemed power punchers and brawlers, when they look horrible, they complain and say, oh, that guy ran. They look bad and say, oh, he ran, he's a runner, he's a track star, right?
Well, we're going to see about that when David Benavidez truly fights someone that has the true potential to beat him. Because a lot of the times they can say that when they possibly lose a fight. That's usually when those fighters say that.
David Benavidez is like, okay, you want to run, you want to try to get away from the smoke, no problem. And he'll hunt you down and cut off the ring. That's a true fighter because you're so comfortable in your style.
But to give credit to Benavidez, he did not complain about Caleb Plant or some amount of the other fighters when he could have. So, you know, I'll give him credit. But once again, I need to see him in a fight where he could really potentially lose or he's close to losing. I don't think Benavidez, other than maybe the Plant fight and the Gavril fight, I don't think that he's ever been in a fight that he's really been close to losing.
It don't matter what the other person is doing. You're going to inflict the punishment and impose your will and impose your style on the opponent. I really seldomly hear David Benavidez talk about the other person's style in a negative way. Like, he might say, oh, the guy might try to run when he starts feeling the power, but he just accepts
what David Benavidez said about Demetrius Andrade is that he pretty much thought that, you know, he's a fighter very similar to that of Caleb Plant, and that he throws a lot of combinations, and, you know, that he's kind of a boxer, you know, and that he's that he's eventually, you know, just going to fold under the pressure, that he's eventually going to be able to stop him. And he was right.
It is. If I'm in there with a David Lemieux who's going to stand there and trade, he'd be like, good luck. If I'm in there with a guy who's going to quote-unquote run, then, oh, well, I'm going to hunt you down and I'm going to break you down.
David Lemieux is a guy that can hit like a truck, but in terms of boxing IQ, he does not have it.
and I'm gonna get to you. You can't run. You in a square circle. There's no way unless you get out the ring. There's no escape. Versus like you look at Canelo when he fights at Edeslandi Lara, him and his fans keep talking about, oh, Lara ran. But Benavidez isn't worried about.
That is true. But once again, like I said, I need to see Benavidez in a fight to where he might potentially, end up losing that fight. I agree. His fans did end up saying that in the Edeslandi Lara fight. I remember that, and I thought Lara did very good against Canelo, at least in certain rounds. But like I said, I need to see David Benavidez in a fight where he could really potentially lose.
Your style. He's worried about imposing his style on you. Respect. Great fight, great night. That's the realest breakdown that you will find. It's detailed on this YouTube platform. Subscribe to my channel for more like this and future fights. And I'm out.
But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. I just thought that I would talk about that because I thought it would be very particularly interesting. But these guys are very hard-body going to be cheering for David Benavidez. They're going to be on their knees praying that David Benavidez defeats Canelo. And once again, let me tell you what, there's a very good chance of that. I think it's a 50-50 level fight. It really just depends what version of Canelo we're going to get. I thought that he looked great in his last fight against Jamel Charlo, but he was expected to. Jamel is a little bit smaller than him. I don't think that the size was as advantageous as what people were trying to say. I think Canelo really is pretty much a natural 160-pounder who hydrates a bit heavier than usual. And I think that Jamel is also probably debatably, you could debate around a natural 160-pounder. Or Canelo, maybe you could debate that he's like a natural 164-pounder, something like that. Or 163. But, he's not really a full-on 168-pounder. But once again, I need to see Canelo to where he's going to look. But we'll see. But anyways, that's pretty much about it. This is a very interesting fight. Thought that I would review that. Unfortunate for Andrade, but certain things were revealed. It is what it is. But in my personal view, is Andrade a hype job? I wouldn't call him a hype job. I would say that he was a little bit overrated. But once again, this is the reason why I never put him that far ahead of Plant at all, or some of these other fighters, just in my personal view. But anyways, that's pretty much about it. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see where this goes, and hopefully we get that Canelo versus Benavidez fight next year. But that's about it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.